My name is Yupari, and I'd like to welcome you into my studio today to guide you along the steps involved in creating this portrait painting. And in this week's video, we're going to focus a little bit more on the values. So we're going to focus on monochrome. And here we have our model Nicole, and I'm going to keep an image of her to the top left corner of your screen so you can refer to it as I develop the painting. I'm going to be starting off with a size 2 Filbert bristle brush, and I'm going to dip it into my mineral spirits just a little bit and then dab it dry on my paper towel. And I'm going to use raw umber as my drawing color. So I just want to have it thin just a little bit. I just want to thin it out just a little bit just to get the paint to run. So now let's get rid of some of the fear involved in the start of the portrait, and let's just make a little mass like this. Just to kind of get acclimated with the surface. I'm just trying to etch in where I think I want the head to fit. So let's say that the top of the forehead is there and the bottom is here. Let's make it a little bit lower. So I have to kind of make two indications here to figure out where I want to place the head. So if I want the head to be placed about here, let's use a little oval for now to figure out the placement of the entire shape of the head. So something like this. Let's just keep it nice and simple. Usually I'll tell you to use straight lines and angles, but I just want to emphasize just the simplicity of things. So just a little ovoid looking shape like this. Then we have a little mass for the hair. Something like that. Very simple. So we can think of, say, the profile view, which is what we're working on. We can think of it as say here is the mass of the skull. So if you picture this as the skull, you can think of it as a skull with a jaw. So let's attach a jaw, being this little triangular, see that? Little triangular looking shape here. So that would be now the jaw that we have placed on there. And usually we want this distance here from here to here to be equal to this distance here from the top to the bottom. So let's just make sure that that is going to work first. So here to here is about here to here. So we're pretty good there. So let's just make sure that that relationship holds. And now let's think about the neck. So the neck is coming at about, letting the brush run free a little bit, coming right about here, let's say. And the shoulder is right about there. Purposefully making it a little bit loose. I really want to emphasize just the simplicity of things. You don't really have to be super tight or super precise early on. So I want the head to be just a little bit to the right. So let's move this. I think this is a good positioning. So I'm just thinking of the composition right now. So I don't want the neck to be too far to the right. So let's use a negative shape here. So negative being this shape out here. So I think this negative shape is about good. So I'm just going to push the rest of these forms out to the left just a little bit. So I want to maintain this negative shape here. And we can put in a little mark here for the clothing. So I'm just focusing on this negative shape here. So this comes up, goes over like that. Something like that. Now I'm going to make some indications of just light and dark. So we have just a simple mass here. Just a simple mass for the shadow. See that? At this point, it's a very simplistic mass. Just trying to get acclimated with the surface. I'm going to put another mask for the eye socket somewhere about there, and for the nose somewhat about there. Now for the ear, let's just make a little brush stroke here for now. Now for the dark of the hair, I'm going to mask this in very quickly. I just want to have a good understanding of these light and dark patterns. So very quickly, I'm just going to mask that in. Something like that. Very simple and easy, yet very focused on the shapes. So it's somewhat like that. And then we have a dark behind the ear, and I can't forget about that. So let's just do something like this for now. And by the way, the surface was toned. I toned it with oil paint actually before, like a week ago or so. It's just raw umber. I just put raw umber onto a acrylic gessoed panel and then just rubbed it in with paper towel. So that's how I got that tone. Alright, so now let's start to draw a little bit more. So I'm going to be taking a piece of paper towel and I'm going to test it out first and see how much it subtracts on its own. So let's just subtract a little bit here. And I'd say that's subtracting pretty good. So I'm going to hold back on putting mineral spirits on it and try to keep this as an eraser. So let's think about it as charcoal. Now I just released another charcoal drawing video this Wednesday. So I'm going to be referencing to the paint handling like charcoal. So I'm going to leave a link in the description below so you can look at that video and see what I'm talking about in terms of the paint subtracting and stuff like that, just like charcoal. So now that I know that I have an eraser that works, so this is my additive material and then that was my subtractive material. So now that I know I have an eraser, I'm going to think about just this outside shape now. So before that, I want to know that my eye socket is placed in the relative correct position. So this little brush stroke, I want to know that this brush stroke is placed in a accurate position in relation to this little top point here and this little bottom point here. So optically, I see that perhaps this, let's make a little extra brush stroke there. So this little stand-in for the eye socket is somewhat halfway to this area. Meaning this distance here is somewhat equal to this distance. And that's all I'm doing. I'm just trying to optically just figure out where things are fitting as opposed to trying to measure. I'm trying to give my eyes a chance to see the proportions. So this might have to come up just a little bit. Just like that. And then we have more of a angle here now for this shape. Just like that. So at this point I'm only using the mineral spirits to dilute the paint, and I'm using the raw umber and my paper towel. And the paper towel I'm using is a Viva brand. I kind of like that brand of paper towel. It's the one that's like a cloth. So they advertise it as cloth-like. But in any case, if you want to know exactly what materials I'm using, and I'm talking about the panel or the actual paint brands and the exact brushes, I'm going to have all of that typed up in the description below. So I'm just getting an idea of this distance here in relation to this distance. And now the center line of the head is going to be something that I'm going to want to focus on at this stage. So we're looking at mostly profile. We see just a little glimpse of the eye there, but it's mostly profile. So the center line is pretty much on the side. So this comes out like this. And so the only thing that I'm going to notice is that the entire structure of the mandible, so this little area here is a little bit further to the left in relation to your screen. So let's go ahead with just simple straight lines and angles and try to establish that. So here we have a little angle here. So when it starts to get kind of sticky like that, I'll just switch to a clean side of the paper towel, just like that. Very similar to charcoal. So just like that, let's just try to get only the most important light and dark shapes. I'm just going to subtract a little bit more there. Something like that. And this goes up here. So if I keep my shapes simple like this, it's going to be much easier for me to, when I stand back and relate each little shape to one another, it's going to be easier for me to pinpoint where things need to fit. And, of course, if I need to correct things, keeping it simple like that is much easier to correct. So this whole shape comes up somewhat like this now. So this comes up further like this. Makes an angle up here. Now moving that shape up, correspondingly I have to focus on the bottom of that shape. So let's just go ahead and figure out where that needs to go. It's very nice when the oil paint is just so free and so malleable and easy to move. It's actually very relaxing. So maybe that, let's look at this shape here. So here's the chin, the corner of the chin. Just like that. 1, 2, 3, 4. That's all I need for the negative shape. And again, negative shape is this little outside shape here. Just like that. Just trying to focus on these simple patterns of light and dark. And I have a big synthetic brush here, so I'm just going to run it across like this once in a while. And this is just going to help me to eliminate the glare. So now let's do something for the mouth. So the muzzle of the mouth comes out to about there. And we have the chin right about there. This comes out here. Something like that. I'm just going to level some of this out. So now let's start to block in some more refined shapes. So I'm actually going to subtract a little bit more here. Just like that. Making sure I don't lose this position right here. So that glabella, that little area right there, is a kind of, let's see, it's a little bit further to the right than the chin, but maybe not that far to the right. So let's push it out just a little bit. Very simple. Let's get rid of some of the glare. And so the tone that I have under here, I want to emphasize that the raw umber that I used here, I let sit for like a week or so, just to make sure it was completely dry. I usually tone with acrylic, But I thought, why not just try with the oil paint and see how it works. And I kind of like it. So we have here now a simple shape. I have to stand back and see if it's working or not. Can't really know. Can't really know how things are working until I have everything in place. So now we're going to make a little shape here for the eye. So just a little shape right here. Just a little brush stroke for the top of the, or the bottom of the upper eyelid. And then another one right there. And then after standing back, I see that maybe this whole shape needs to be a little bit bigger. So sometimes I have to add information, stand back, and then see how it's fitting. So let's just keep it like this for now. Just a simple blob there for the eye socket. And a lot of these decisions, I kind of feel them out, or I stand back and then I see that they need to be adjusted. So now let's look at this little shape here. So rather than focus on that line for the nose, I'm going to focus on this shape here, this dark shape for the cast shadow of the nose. So let's do a little vertical gesture here. So if this is the corner of the eye socket here, this comes out to here. How is this nose existing in relation to the corner of the eye socket? I tell you what, I don't think this shape comes that far out. So maybe it comes to about here. And the shape goes up like that. Don't really know. I'm just trying to get a feel for it. So we have a little simple shape there. Gesture here, let's see, this is coming a little bit closer to the corner of the eye socket. Maybe about there. The shape comes down to here. And let's put a little shape here for the mouth. Just a little brush stroke for that. Now I'm going to do the same thing for the bottom. So I'm really just trying to focus on these simple light and dark patterns for the features. And I want to keep it so that, of course I usually say if I keep these shapes simple and easy to work with, then they're simple and easy to change when the time comes to make corrections. So I'm going to go ahead and say that again. Keeping these shapes simple and easy for me to understand, especially at a stage like this, is going to be very useful for when the time comes, or if the time comes that I have to make any adjustments. Those adjustments will be simple and easy to understand. We have a little shape like that. Comes up to here. I'm really just trying to get this light pattern for the lip. Something like that. Now this shape here, it's a little bit more of an angle there. This curves in a little bit more. So this is the orbicularis oris, the shape that encompasses the mouth. So it comes out just like that. The nose. I tell you what, with the profile view, it's very deceptive because you see only half of the face and then you think, oh, it's only half of the work. Well, not really. It's about the same. Sometimes you can argue that it's more difficult because you have to imagine the other side. But with a profile view, I'm going to try to focus on the outside outline here. And eliminate some glare. So let's see. the corner of the nose to that shape there. I'd say that the furthest point out, so the point that sticks the furthest out here would be the nose, and it might not be that much. So let's cut that in here. It curves up like this. And now the mouth. This has to angle in a little bit more. So the danger in the profile view is frontalizing, meaning trying to make the face turn closer towards you. And so oftentimes lips will go too far out this way, or eyes will go too far out that way because we're trying to frontalize. So I have to be a little bit cautious of that and not have the lip come too far out. Carve in just like that. And now let's get this little light for the eye. Even if I'm going to put it in the wrong spot, let's just try to reason with that shape. Just like that. Let's get a feel for this position now. So I'm going to make some marks here to figure out the eye, knowing that it might be in the wrong place. But I gotta try. So there's a little bit of light there. This curves in like this. We have the bottom eyelid here. More of a shape for the eye socket. So this is pretty much still kind of trying to guess where this shape goes, just using my eye. And then after putting that bit of information, I see that this has to come up just a little bit. So let's push that up a little bit. So this curves in like this, curves out there. This is more straight. This angles this way. Something like that. And then this is going to come even further up. A little angle for the chin up here. So we have, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4. Now I still don't know if that's correct, but it's a starting point still. So now, after standing back, I see that this shape is getting a little too big. This little dark shape here. And it may be too far down. So again, using my intuition, pretty much, I'm going to move this up a little bit. Curve this in like that. And now let's actually move this a little bit to the left relative to your screen. Just a simple shape like that still. I get rid of the glare there. So now let's do some more measuring, some more optical measuring tricks here. So here we have a point here, so I'm going to make a point there. I'm going to make a point here, these 2 points. And I'm going to use a vertical, call this a vertical plumb line. And then I see now, after looking at the image, that this comes still a little bit further out here. So let's make the vertical again. So somewhat about here. That's all it is, just relating 2 points to one another. And then after doing that, I'm going to make another point. So say right here on this corner of the glabella, this little area that's protruding. And then I'm going to make a point here on the nose. Then again, with a vertical line, I see that maybe this is still too far out. So let's push that in just a little bit. So using those points can really simplify the task of getting the proportions. Or you're not trying to figure out where a nose is placed or where an eye is placed. Rather, you're just working with 2 points. Just 2 simple points. Gonna move this up a little bit more. Just like that. And then after standing back, I see that I can articulate that curve of the wing of the nose a little more now. So getting another clean tip on the paper towel, I'm gonna just carve into that. Just like that. Handles just like charcoal. I consider this even more user-friendly than charcoal actually. But it might be just because oil paint is my favorite medium to work with. So I'm going to go ahead and make a value scale on my palette so that I can use it to reference. And I may take some of the paint from the value scale as well. So let's start off, let's mix it over here. So I dipped my brush first into my medium, and my medium is consisting of 1 part stand oil to 4 parts mineral spirits. And so you can, if you wanted to create that mixture, you can do something as simple as 1 teaspoon of stand oil to 4 teaspoons of mineral spirits. So here we have 1 value. So I'm going to thin it out again by just dipping it into the brush, dipping the brush into the mineral spirits, and then dabbing it dry. Now we're going to make another value. So this is another value down. Then we're going to make another value, just like that. And then down to another. Notice it's getting progressively darker as I go down. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Let's say 6. So the floor is going to be 6. The ceiling is going to be, you can say 1. So there we have the floor. So that's going to be the value scale that we'll use. And so now I have 3 brushes. And so I have one with this light tape. I have one with the blue tape. And then I have one with no tape. So we have 3 brushes and 6 values. So this brush can live somewhere in this area. The brush with the blue tape can live somewhere in this area with these 2. And then finally, this dark brush can live over here with these 2. So now let's incorporate a little bit of planar thinking. So let's start off with this value here. So let's create a plane, say right here. So there's a plane here, and it's receiving a fair amount of light, and I'm purposefully not putting too much paint onto the surface so that it's letting me create kind of a transparency, a kind of transparent look, which I kind of like. And so this plane here is just one simple plane, and it is existing a little bit further out here. So again, a little bit further out here. And now there's going to be another plane, say a darker one over here. So I'm going to go ahead and let the tone on the surface work as some of the values for me. So there's going to be a little bit more of a half tone here. And when I say half tone, I just mean somewhat right here. So this is nice to have now because I oftentimes say half tone this, half tone that, dark like this, dark like that. These are the half tones I'm talking about. So let's use this one. So this one will go about here. And then we'll switch to the light brush. Let's say, maybe not. Let's switch back to the half tone. And let's use now this one. And this, we have a little bit of light here. Just like that. Now let's switch to the light brush. Let's use this one again to incorporate some of the light on the sclera. And again, the sclera is not white. So the sclera is the light of the eye. It's not white. It's something kind of like in the middle over here. Maybe in between these two, really. So now I'm going to switch back to this value and add a little light here. You can see now how that's going to start to take form. And we can even let this light exist over here on this whole little area of the nose, this little plane here, this slab. So for the planar thinking, I'm thinking about this plane, and this plane kind of existing on kind of a similar angle. See here how this whole area is getting more light? And of course, now we can use the ceiling. Now the ceiling, I'm going to use very cautiously. So there's a light over here. And then there's a light kind of over here. So that would be the ceiling. And there's going to be a light over here, actually. Using it very cautiously because that is the lightest I will want to go. And if you noticed, I did incorporate a little bit of the raw umber that was already on the palette with this. So this is not actually straight white. And this is not straight black either. So it's kind of nice because I have room still to keep going on the value scale. Now I'm going to go back into this mixture, but first I'm going to clean off the brush with my mineral spirits. And then I'm going to actually remix this. Just try to keep it in the same value family. See that? Just mixing it again. So let's consider this whole plane here. So this whole area, let's just kind of scrub that in there. Just like that. Spread a nice tone on it. Now let's just consider this area now. I'm going to use my fan brush to get rid of the glare so you can see the true value. Now I'm going to go into the halftones. So this value here. So I think there's more of a halftone over here. So it is getting a little bit darker over here. So this is another plane here that's facing the light a little bit less. And even over here, let's go one more down. It's even a little darker over here. Go back one up over here. Let's try to get this plane. And we're getting a little bit darker over here as we're turning away from the light. So let's switch to this one. Just like that. Let's remix that. So just want to make sure that it stays in the same value family. And then let's go ahead and apply it. See, now that's too dark. But as long as I keep these values here in relation to one another, meaning this value exists in between these values, I should be okay. Should be able to organize them. So this shape goes about here. Now let's eliminate the glare. And I tell you what, I'll tell you why it's getting darker over here. It's getting darker because it's turning away from the light. And as things turn away from the light, so you picture a plane turning away from the light, as a plane turns away from the light, it starts to get closer and closer to shadow. And then that's what creates this transition of values. I'm creating more of a subtle transition there. Back in with the fan brush just to eliminate the glare. And now I'm going to go and maybe move one up to get this transition. So I'm going to switch to the light brush here. So again, I'm going to remix this area. Just like that. I used a little bit of my medium just to get it to flow a little bit. Just like that. Just want to make sure that the value remains in the correct place. So let's go ahead and try to create another transitioning little value here. Just like that. Now then, there's going to be a plane here. A little tiny plane. So let's move this here and I'll show you what I'm talking about. So this is the frontal, so you can think of this as the skull protruding, and then this is the frontal ridge. Think about it as just like a little structure here. But then there's a little divot here. And don't quote me here, but I think that's the frontal eminence of the forehead, this little value here. But in any case, if we don't know what it's called exactly, we can still identify it as a structure, as a plane existing in space. And it's angled a little bit further away from the light. So that's what creates that little halftone. Now let's switch to this brush. Let's bring this value up just a little bit. Notice how I can actually manipulate the values. I can adjust the values and still keep them working in relation to one another, which is kind of nice. So now let's adjust that. Go somewhat up like this. And I actually do this, I don't really think about it, but I do this with my palette when I'm using colors. So oftentimes you'll see when I'm doing a portrait painting that is not in monochrome, you'll actually see my values on the palette kind of transition like this from light to dark. Not this organized, but they do kind of transition like that. And I really tried to get myself to do that a while ago, and then it just kind of became just habit, really. It's very nice to have that organization. So this area here is catching a lot less light, so let's try this value. So let's put that in there, see if it works. No, that's too light. So let's switch to down here, same brush. Remember, this brush with the blue tape lives over here. So let's switch to this brush now. That might be a little better. So this area here is catching a lot less light. I'm going to leave some of the tone of the panel to have this value here to just demonstrate this value. But there is a little shape here I want to get rid of. So I'll just get rid of it with this. And fan it out. So there is a little glimpse of this eye. I can either choose to leave it out or put it in there. Let's put it in there. So let's use this value very carefully. I'm gonna just make a little brush stroke here to show that exists over there. And then switch to the halftone, the darker halftone. So this one. There we go. So I'll tell you what. Let's label these brushes just to make it easier. This is gonna be, I should have labeled them in the beginning, but in any case, so this is the light brush. And this is the middle tone brush right here. And this is the dark brush. So let's just think about them like that so that I can switch back and forth with them and label them and identify them more easily. So to the middle brush, I'm going to use this value here, and I'm going to just spread a little tone over here now. Just a nice little tone. And I'm actually going to put that tone here too on the nose. So now switching to the light brush, I'm going to use this middle portion of the light brush, so the darker value for the light brush, and put in some light over here, just like that. So this is another plane. So this is the plane around the cheeks. See how we can create volume with values alone. All that time you were focused on getting the right color to get the surface structure to work, and then the answer was right in front of you, the values. See how now I'm starting to create more of a volume for this area. So let's move to the lighter portion of the light brush. I did bring the value down purposefully just a little bit, and then add this light, just like that. But now that's too light. So let's go ahead and go back to this portion of the light brush. Okay, so now let's put that back in. Now I'm going to actually switch to the dark, or to the halftone brush, this one right here, and I'm going to bring its value up just a little bit, not too much, just a little bit. Now I'm going to get this little corner here for the nose, very slight angle coming out like that. I'm going to use my fan brush to get rid of the glare, just like that. Now switching back to the halftone brush, I'm going to go to the darker area of the halftone, make it a little darker, something like that. And so now, let's see, I'm going to put a value here now. This rolls up like that. We have a little tone here, light area of the middle tone. So the lighter area of the halftone brush gets a little bit lighter over here, just like that. Switching back to the light brush, let's go ahead and add this plane back in. So oftentimes I'll put a plane in and then I'll take it out and I'll put it back in as I figure out how the values are fitting in relation to one another. So this plane here is the top plane of the cheekbone, the zygomatic bone. So this is making a very distinguished shape here, something like this. And then this area is actually lighter than this area. This plane is facing the light a little bit more. So let's just use the paint that's on this brush, but with less pressure. Let's let it mix with the paint that's already on there to create this tone, just like that. Now I'm going to fan this out just a little bit. Now let's go back into these planes for the cheek. Now I'm going to use the light area of the middle tone brush. I'm going to raise the value just a little bit. Now I'm going to place this light here. So this area here is receiving more light than this. So let's do that. It's a little bit lighter. So this plane is a little bit lighter than this, but it's still a little bit darker than this. So I have to keep these shapes in relation to one another. And I'll tell you what, it's kind of like a puzzle. If you like jigsaw puzzles, it's somewhat like a jigsaw puzzle, where you have to figure out first where the shapes have to fit. So first I had to figure out where these light and dark shapes fit. Say maybe this is the outside of your jigsaw puzzle. And then you find one piece of the jigsaw puzzle, right? So say this value. So I found this value now. And now I have to move my pieces around. Like pick out one piece. Does it fit? No, it doesn't quite fit there. Another piece? No, it doesn't quite fit there. And until I find the piece that fits, then I'm good. So it's kind of like a jigsaw puzzle where you can apply the same kind of reasoning. So this whole shape here is lighter. So I'm going to switch to the halftone brush, and raise the value just a little bit again. And now I'm going to put in this light. So it is a little bit lighter here. There's the light of the nose. And then tell you what, I'm going to go a little bit darker on the same area of value, but still it is existing within the surrounding values. So here I'm going to try and create this shape now, the outside shape. So it's a little bit straight here, just like that. Fan it out. Now I'm going to switch to the darker area of the halftone. So let's use a little bit more raw umber there to get this value. And this is going to be my dark light. So this dark light is going to exist somewhere over here. Very simple, just there. I'm going to fan it out. Now let's switch to this area, this little area of the portrait here. So this is the muzzle containing the structure of the mouth. So let's go to, let's say, the lighter area of the halftone brush. So I'm gonna go ahead and apply more paint here. So something like this. So this value, and let's apply it here. And first let's use it to sculpt out more of the shape here. Just like that. And now let's apply this value here. Tell you what, let's start out with the lights first. So let's use this and then apply just a little bit of light here. You'll see it's almost like magic when these values start to work and create the form. It's pretty beautiful. Beautiful when it works. So a little bit of light there. Let's move up to the value just below the lightest light. So switching to the light brush. A little bit of light right there. Back to the halftone brush. The same area of value. And let's put a little bit of light right here. And then let's switch to the light brush. Same value here. A little bit of light here. Wonderful when this works. You can create forms so quickly in this way. Now back to the middle tone brush. Now let's tell you what, let's go to the darker area of the middle tone brush. So this area right here. And let's lighten it up just a little bit. Just a little lighter. And now let's apply this little transition of value here. Very simple. Just like that. Now I'll switch to the dark brush. And I'm actually going to raise this value a little bit. Still keeping it in the same value family, but just a little bit lighter. Now I'm going to use that to apply this dark light over here. And let's actually cover all this first. Just like that. Just covering it all first. Creating this plane. I'm going to fan out the glare. Now I'm going to switch to the middle tone brush. So over here, I'm going to darken it just a tad bit. Maybe a tad bit more. Right there. So now I'm going to apply just a little glimpse of light over here. Because this is a plane that's catching a little bit more light. Now I'm going to switch back to the dark brush, back into this same value here, and I'm going to create more of a darker plane over here. So this area here, the bottom of the orbicularis oris, is catching a little bit less light. So let's make a little swooping motion here, like that. Just a little less light. And now gonna go back to that same value, but raise it just a little bit. I mean, I'm going to bring it down just a little bit. And I'm going to make sure it still exists in the same value family. So that was moving it down too much. Let's add a little more of the titanium white. So somewhat like that. I apologize, it shakes my surface a little bit when I mix. I'm going to try to steady out the surface. Alright, so we have dark light over here. See that? Curves in like this. Curves out here. Just like that. Eliminate the glare. Now let's focus on the side plane of the face. So I'm going to try to utilize the tone of the surface as much as I can, but this does need to get a little more refinement. So I'm going to switch to the halftone brush, and I'm going to I'm going to lower this value a little bit here. I'm going to lower it a little bit, yet still keep it in that same value family. So applying a little more paint. As long as it remains in the same value family, I'm going to see if I can use this tone now. So I'm going to just spread this tone throughout here, starting from this furthest point back, creating this gradation. So this whole area, this whole side plane of the face is receiving a lot less light than, say, this area. So just like that. And then I'm going to go switch to the dark brush. I'm actually going to just use the same value that's here. I'm going to just apply a little more of a tone over here, just like that. And I'm actually going to switch to the halftone and then just make that value a little bit lighter, just like that. Now I'm going to get rid of the glare with the fan brush. Now switching to the lighter area of the halftone brush, I'm going to go ahead and create this little plane here of light that's receiving more light, but it's still pretty dark. So this is receiving more light than this, but it's still darker than that. So I'm actually going to bring this value down just a little bit, yet making sure that it remains in the value family. Something like that. And so what's going on here, why this band of value here exists, is because this right here is the plane of the cheekbone. So you can kind of see the evidence of the cheekbone existing here. But as the plane wraps around beneath the cheekbone, it starts to get a little closer to the light. So that's what creates this little area of light. And this value here that I'm applying is oftentimes very hard to see, but it does usually exist. So just a little more light there. And then I'm going to go ahead and retouch that plane that I was talking about. So switching to the dark brush, I'm going to go ahead and try and reestablish where that plane is existing. So this is the cheekbone, and I'm going to make it a little bit darker for now. And I'm going to go back in with the middle tone brush with the same paint that was already on the brush. I'm going to use it to change the value, just like that. And the fan brush, just to get the glare out of there. And I'm going to go ahead and flatten this out again. Again, remember, it's like the jigsaw puzzle. You find one piece, you think it's there, and then you find out it's not. And then you just switch to another piece until it fits. So now with the lighter area of the halftone, so I'm going to add more paint to it. So right here, I'm going to go ahead and place this value back in again. Now I see that it's maybe too light, so I'm going to go ahead and edit this value. Bring it down a little bit. That's a little better. So this plane here is turning away from the light, but it's turning away from the light very slowly. So that's why I'm kind of patting down the paint like this, just so that I can use some of the paint. So I'm using some of the paint that's already on here to mix with the paint that's on my brush, creating a more gradual transition of value, just like that. Now that's starting to work. And when you use this same value over here, now I'm going to raise it up just a little bit to create this nice and smooth transition. Again, I'm using the paint that's on the surface to help me gradate these values, just like that. Now you see how it's starting to create a form, how we're starting to see how this plane is wrapping down here. But I have to be careful and not over exaggerate this dark either. So I'm going to go ahead and make it a little bit more smooth, just like that. I'm going to switch to the middle area, the darker area of the middle tone brush. Very simple, just like that. And now I'm going to put some information in for the ear. And so with the ear, I'm going to consider the darks first. So I have my dark brush, and I'm going to use just this value here. Actually, tell you what, let's use the floor. It's going to be the first time I've used the floor. I've been just kind of roaming around these 5 values. So let's use the 6th. So we have here this dark for the ear. There's a little dark over here, showing up just a little bit there. And then a little dark over here. And then of course we have this dark back here. I'm gonna fan it out. Now switching to the middle tone brush, let's go to the lighter area of the middle tone brush. So this value right here. And let's use it to pick out some of the lights here. So this is receiving a little bit of light. This area here is receiving a little bit of light. And then we have a little swoosh of light right there. See that? Just a little glimpse of light here. And then we have some light over here. Very simple. Just distributing the light where it needs to be, where it's showing up. A little bit of light over here. And I'm going to purposefully keep using the same brush right now because I noticed that it's starting to pick up some of the tone from, say, this dark of the ear. So let's just pick up some of it just like this. And then create this value. Oil paint is a beautiful medium that allows you to create these subtle transitions very easily. And it stays wet for a while, so it allows you to keep working. Just like that. I let it purposefully touch a little bit of this dark to create this little dark halftone as it rolls in there. And then let's let it mix with some of these colors. Whoops, I said colors. See, I'm thinking of color. I'm purposefully letting it mix with some of these values. Now I hope I didn't say colors before. I might have, but I think about color and value very similarly when I'm painting. I think about how they exist in relation to one another. So I'm thinking of how each value is existing in relation to the surrounding values. Notice the values on the palette. Now I'm going to switch back to the dark brush and put this dark here that I lost a little bit right there. Then switching to the middle tone brush, I'm going to pick up a little more paint. And we have a little glimpse of light right there. Just a little bit of light there. Now I'm going to go to the darker area of the middle tone. And I'm going to just smoothen out this dark shape here, creating a nice little soft edge there. And then going to bring that value down a little bit. And now this plane here needs to get a little darker, just like that. Now switching to the dark brush, I'm going to go to the floor. And then I'm going to carve out this shape a little bit, just like that. And then I have just a little glimpse of light there. Switching to the halftone brush, let's go to the darker area and let's smoothen this out. Let it connect with this plane. So I would call this plane right here a transitioning plane because it's transitioning into this area. So this plane is now transitioning into this plane. And this plane here that I'm painting is the kind of like the bridge between them. Very simply. And now I'm going to thin out the dark brush. So applying some of the medium onto it. And now I'm going to go to the lighter area of the dark brush. Raise its value just a touch. And I have it fairly thin just so I can apply a little, almost like a glaze of value here. And I'm going to be very cautious with this because I may lose my light and shadow, and that is That is a very, very risky thing to do, but I'll show you why I'm doing this. Now I'm going to switch to the halftone brush, and the darker area of the halftone brush, I'm going to raise its value down just a little bit, and I'm going to go ahead and reestablish that light and shadow delineation that I had just obliterated. Just like that, so there's a little edge of the shadow there. And now there's a little corner here, goes into the neck right here, goes out down like this, and then straight down. Now I'm going to eliminate the glare. So I'll tell you why I did that. So switching back to the halftone brush, the darker area of the halftone brush, I'm going to pull out some light here. And I'm going to use the paint that I applied onto the neck when I blasted out the shadow to mix with the paint that's on my brush here. So it's creating kind of a gradation. See that? So it's getting lighter up here, but then as I'm losing paint on the brush, it's making it a little bit darker as I get closer down here. And then here's another little trick. So there's still some paint on the bottom. So I'm just going to roll the brush over here like that, just like that. And then I'm going to create this shape here. So that is why I blasted out this shadow shape before, so that I could come back in with these mixtures and create a much more smooth gradation of value. And let's just let it go all the way down here. I eliminate some of the glare again. And I'm going to go to the lighter area of the halftone brush. So there's a little bit of light here. Just a little glimpse of light here on the clavicle. Just like that. And another little glimpse of light here. Just like that. And then actually more of a light here. So let's put that in there. Let's get into some smaller forms now. So I'm switching to the dark brush and the lighter portion of the dark brush. I'm going to try and adjust this value very carefully. So I want this dark to remain there, but I want this little area to be just a little darker. Very tiny. Tiny little change. So we start off with the big picture, and we got all of those planes and things. But now you can either stop at those planes or you can go in and add a little more refinement. So I'm going to go and add just a little more refinement. So I'm switching to the light brush, the darker portion of the light brush. And I see that maybe there's a little path right here. You see this little path here? You can think about it maybe as a trail in the park that's going uphill like this and wrapping around. Maybe these are some trees. So we're getting a little more light right here. Just a little more light. And that might be too much, so I'm going to bring that down. So I tell you what, just added a little bit of raw umber, just keeping it in this, trying to keep it in the same value. So this is still the darker portion of the light brush with a very slight touch. See that? I'm kind of hurting the paint up here. So this is the top of that little valley. And it's receiving much more light over here, and then it slowly starts to gradate over here. Even though she is very young, she has a very youthful face, we still have some structures here that we can tinker with. So now switching to the middle tone brush. Let's say the lighter portion of the middle tone. There's a little bit more dark here with just a tad bit. Now that's too light. So I'm going to go one down on the middle tone brush. So now I'm going to mix the darker portion of the middle tone brush. We have this little value here. It's a very slight touch, almost like a feather touch, really. And then this whole area here, there's a little band of value here. Now this plane is good, it's lighter, but now there's a little more of a transition here. So switching back to the to the light brush, I'm mixing now the darker area of the light brush. There's a little more of a gradation. Let's see if it's too light. So let's start off with the light. So something like that. It may be too light. So I'll tell you what, I'm switching to the halftone brush. I'm gonna use the high or the lighter region of the halftone brush. So there's just a little more light here. Right over here, very tiny. A little more of a pathway right there. And I'm going to use a little watercolor brush to smoothen out this little plane. So if you think about it like a sculpture, what I did was like a chop, like a chisel chop. And then this is maybe like the sanding paper to say like a marble sculpture or something like that. I'm just going to soften that just a little bit. So I tell you what would be a great exercise towards learning how to create these forms like this is to do some cast drawing or some cast sculpture. And so what that is, cast sculpture is essentially you're drawing or painting in like monochrome like this, like a Greek sculpture, and trying to study all those forms. At least it helped me in terms of trying to understand how to reason with these values. So now let's move on to the nose. There's a little more of a shape here that I'm missing. So I'm going to use the halftone brush, the darker area of the halftone brush. And let's just flatten this out for now. Just a little flat shape there. So again, with the darker area of the halftone. I tell you what, there's a dark light here. So I'm switching to my dark brush. And I'm on the lighter area of the dark brush. So let's create this little dark light now. See how it's transitioning into the shadow? This is what gives form. This is what gives the turning of the form. And then as I do that, I'm going to actually push this further down here. Just kind of leveling it out, just putting a flat plane there. Now back to the light brush. I see that there's a plane here. So the lighter area of the halftone brush. So with the lighter area of the halftone brush, I'm going to place this plane here that's a little bit lighter. Just like that. And then, after standing back, I see that this plane actually so this is the wing of the nose, the little bulb there. And so this kind of is telling me that this shape here needs to come down a little bit. So switching back to the dark brush, I'm going to just push this down, picking up some of the paint that's on here and pushing it down just a little bit. Doesn't take much. Just pushing it down. Now with the light brush, I'm going to go ahead and place the highlight of this area of the wing right there. So that's the highlight of the wing of the nose. And now I'm going to go into the darker area of the halftone brush. So with the darker area of the halftone brush, I'm going to create more of a transitioning plane here. Just like that. And then the darker area of the light brush, I'm going to place this little band of light here. Just like that. And then I'm going to place that highlight again. Just like that. And then with the halftone brush, the lighter area of the halftone brush, I'm going to push this in a little bit more. Then switching back to the lighter area of the dark brush, smoothen this out. Tell you what, I'm going to use the sanding paper analogy again. So think of it as a marble sculpture, and that was a chop. So now that I have that plane chopped out, I'm going to smoothen it out with this watercolor brush. Any cheap watercolor brush will do the trick. Now back to the light brush. I'm going to go onto the darker area of the light brush and place this plane here. A little more light over here. Very simply, just like that, creating that plane. And then I see that this may need to smoothen out a little bit. But I like the plane change that I put in there before, so I'm going to just use the watercolor brush to just smoothen out that transition. See that? Very simply. And the same thing goes over here. I have the plane change that I want, but it's still a little harsh, so I'm going to soften this just a little bit. Now the earring, I'm going to start off with the the darker version of the dark brush. So I'm going to start with the floor. I'm going to make a mark here for where the earring is going to start. And another mark, say, about here for the bottom of the earring. And now I'm going to make the corners. So just a little swoosh there for one corner. Swoosh there for the other corner. I'm going to get rid of the glare. Now, very simply, I'm just going to go to the light brush, or let's go into the lighter area of the halftone brush. Let's get a little trace of light here. Very simply, just like that. Another little trace of light here. So this is going to be like the middle light for the earring. And now the light, so the ceiling. So I reserved the ceiling for pretty much this highlight of the earring. Just a little touch right here is all that it needs. Just a little touch there. And then I'm going to go back to the darker area of the light brush, though it will be slightly noticeable, and make this highlight just a tad bit darker. There, like that. Now just for the purpose of aesthetics, this outline here is kind of too harsh, so I'm going to cut back on it a little bit with the paper towel. Just like that. And maybe a little bit more here. and back to the fan brush to eliminate the glare. So now I'm gonna add some more shapes onto the hair. So I'm gonna switch back to this larger brush. I'm gonna start with the floor. So I'm gonna add in some darker shapes here. So I tell you what, a nice thing about raw umber is that it actually is a little lighter than burnt umber. And burnt umber is of course lighter than ivory black. So if you wanted to push this value scale further, you can do that. If you want to, after it dries, go back into it with a little bit of burnt umber. Actually, I wouldn't do that. If you want to go back into it with color, then you can add ivory black into the mixture and then go in with your colors. Or if you wanted to extend the monochromatic value scale, then you could just go back in with ivory black and then titanium white, because they're kind of similar, but I wouldn't do that. Actually, I like compressing the value range a little bit, and it's kind of, I don't know, it's kind of like a drawing. It's kind of like something that you learn from drawing, from practicing drawing, is to kind of compress your value range a little bit and then get the most you can out of that compressed value range, and it can create very beautiful effects. So now with the paper towel, I'm actually going to get a little more of this shape here. So there's a little bit more light as the hair is being pulled into this area. A little bit more of a shape here. It's much softer too. So let's pick up some of the paint. Just a little bit of the paint while we do this too. Just to get that motion of the hair being pulled up there. A little bit more like this, why not? Just like that. I'm going to use the fan brush to get rid of the glare. Now back in with the raw umber. Just adding in a little shape here. Doesn't take much. I'm trying to get just the most important little pieces of information here to suggest that the hair is being pulled up here. So I'm just trying to make sure that I don't lose the hairline as well. This goes somewhat down here like this. Use the fan brush to eliminate the glare. And pull up here. And with the hair, I'm going to leave it a little bit unfinished, kind of on purpose. I tend to like to create vignettes, like something like this. Just areas of the painting that are left unfinished to complement the areas that are more finished, such as these areas. A little bit of dark here. Let's create a little curve here. Just have fun with it. Little squiggles. Just a few little squiggles. And I eliminate the glare. Just like that. Now switching to the middle tone brush, I'm going to actually go to the darker area of the halftones. So this area right here. And I'm going to actually put in some little glimpses of light in here. So there's some tiny little glimpses of light as the hair is being pulled back. Now back to the watercolor brush, I'm going to just smoothen this out. It's very smooth as it pulls into the hair here. going to smoothen this edge out a little bit too. And with that, we have this week's portrait painting demonstration. Thank you so much for watching. I hope it helps you out. And again, if you would like to know exactly which materials I used for this video, that information will be given in the description box below. So I'll just have all that information typed up. So thanks again for watching. I hope this helps you out. I wish you the best in all of your artwork, and I will see you on the next video.